Who wants to see a bunch of books? Hi, I'm Kelly and I talk about books and writing. Today, we're gonna just go through all the books I bought for myself. Yes, I have my sweater weather mug, and it has been raining. Oh no! Let's try that again. I have my sweater weather mug. I can't say it right now. Sweater weather mug, because it's been raining for 2 straight days here and it's like 52. So it's not that nice out. It's filled with water though, because I'm very thirsty. I did just nail this shelf and spill on some of my books, but they're gonna be okay. But I just put a little end table next to me so I don't have to try to do that again and actually spill on very important books. It's the beginning of May. So if you've been here for more than 1 year, you know that my birthday just passed, and as a gift to myself every year on my birthday, I spend a day going to multiple bookstores and buying a bunch of books. It's kind of like my summer TBR. It's not my entire summer TBR because I obviously am not getting like my book of the month books. I'll read some stuff on my ebook. But it's so fun. It's probably my favorite day of the year, and I had an absolute blast this year. So I'm going to show you everything I bought and tell you the order in which I think I'm going to start reading. And yeah, hopefully I won't spill my water again. First, I went to the small bookshop in my town, and I'm not going to tell you bookstore names because I do like keeping sort of private where I live. So sorry about that. But there I got 3 books, and let's talk about them. So first I got Husbands and Lovers by Beatrice Williams. I've been wanting to read one of her books for probably like 2 or 3 years now. I did go back and forth about getting this one from Book of the Month because it is available from Book of the Month, but I wanted a paperback. And I was like, it's okay. I'm going to use that credit to buy something else at Book of the Month. I don't have to only get a book from Book of the Month because it's less expensive when it's a big hardcover. Because honestly, I am hoping to spend a lot of time at the beach this summer. I live very close to a great lake, and I love just sitting in front of a great lake. My kids are almost old enough for me not to be watching them, but they are going to camp, and I am planning on spending a few days at the beach by myself when they're at camp. Not days, mornings. The little ones are only going for half day for like 3 weeks. So that I wanted to get in a paperback so I could it'd be easier to take to the beach. It's historical fiction with 2 timelines. It's Egypt 1951 and New England 2022, and I can't wait to dive into it. The next book I got from there is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This is another one that I've been meaning to read, an Annabelle Monaghan, for a while. A couple summers ago, I was deciding between, I don't think it was Summer Romance, I think it was her other book, Same Time Next Summer, and The 7-Year Slip. And I was going back and forth and back and forth. And I bought The 7-Year Slip, and then I DNF'd that book. And I was like, always, like, it's so weird, things that stick in your brain. I've always been like, I wonder if I had gotten Same Time Next Summer, if I would have loved it instead of The 7-Year Slip. So I got Summer Romance. I love the cover. I need some light stuff for this summer. So this was the first choice I made for a light read. And I'm really excited to read it. One of my good friends, I put all these books up on my personal Instagram, and one of my good friends, she reads a lot also. She was like, oh, I really like that. She's like, I'm really into like the light contemporary romance right now. And she said that she's really been liking Annabelle Monaghan. So I'm looking forward to it. Lastly, I got Don't Sleep with the Dead by Nhi Vo. This is a companion novel to The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is like one of the only Nhi Vos I haven't read. But, so I loved Siren Queen, and I've read everything that's out so far, I think, of the Singing Hills cycle. I think it's called a cycle. One of my really good friends, not the person who said she loved Summer Romance, who also loves Nhi Vo, did not like The Chosen and the Beautiful. So she read it before I had read much of Nhi Vo. I think at that point I had just read The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tigers Came Down the Mountain. And she was like, I didn't really like The Chosen and the Beautiful. And I do really respect her opinion. And so I was like, well, I'm just not going to read that one for now. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is actually probably a good idea because it's a companion to The Chosen and the Beautiful. And so I can get a feel for it. And it's only 100 pages. It's a very short novella. So I was like, perfect, I'll grab this. I also like to grab some novellas because I do like to read novellas. And so I'll talk about this one more at the end of this video. All right, then I left that bookshop. And the funny thing is, during all of this, I was playing like crazy phone tag with my sister. And every time I got in the car, I'd call her. And then every time I got in a store, she'd call me back. And then finally we actually talked at the same time, which was quite nice. My sister's a realtor and she drives like all over a 50-mile radius to sell houses. And so she was on a very long drive going to one of those places. And I was like, well, I'll be in and out of the car all day. We can chat. It was fun. Okay, so next I went to the bookstore that I used to work at, which is really fun to go back to. It's such an interesting thing because when I worked there, I used to get kind of annoyed at people because people would always be like, you're so lucky you work at a bookstore. How romantic, how amazing. You're just with books all day. And it's a hard job. And like I herniated a disc in my neck lifting boxes there, and working the month of December is pretty miserable. And some of the author events, people are really rude. And so it really like unromanticized books for me for a long time. And it's nice now. I look at it and I think to myself, I would like to work at a bookstore again, but I would never want to work at a bookstore again full time because it's just very hard work. It's work. Everything's work. Work's not romantic. Okay. There's my little diatribe about what it's like to work at a bookstore. I feel the same way about libraries. This is the place. No, I bought more books at one other place, but I bought a lot of books here. I went in with a long list of things I wanted for this summer. Some were specific titles and some were like general, I want something like this. So one of the general things was I wanted a Mary Oliver poetry book, and I grabbed Dreamwork. Mainly because I really wanted to own the poem Wild Geese. And I was like, which is funny because you can like obviously just Google that poem whenever you want now because that's the world we live in. But I was like, I really want to own that poem. And so I was looking through they had a ton of Mary Oliver. Looking through all of them, it was in this one. It was also in like they had a very thick collection of Mary Oliver's like most famous poems that was probably like a 300-page book, and this one's 86 pages. And I hemmed and hawed for a little bit about whether or not I wanted to get the big collection. And I was like, I don't actually want a huge poetry book. I like little poetry books like this. I like that I can put them on my bedside table, or just like that they're not heavy to carry around the house if I want to read while I'm watching my kids do their homework or whatever. So I picked a small one, even though there was like a $2 difference between this and the huge one, because I was like, I just would rather have a tiny one than a huge collection. I can't wait to start reading this. I am probably going to like hold off a little bit because I know once I start, I'll read it really fast. And I want to savor it a little bit. Next, this was on my TBR as well. I got Bird by Anne Lamott. It's a book on writing. And it's been a long time since I read a book on writing, and I do like to kind of continually read books on the craft of writing, and I think it's been like 2 years since I read one. So I grabbed this. This came out, I want to say, when I was working at the bookstore. Oh no, it came out in 1994, so before, but I remember selling it a lot. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's pretty, not ironic. What's a cuter word for ironic? Nostalgic to buy it at the bookstore. I don't think this is going to be towards the top of my TBR. I'll probably just feel like reading a writing book at some point, and then also this is probably going to be a book that I read like 3 chapters and then take a month off and then read 3 chapters, one of those books. Okay, so now those were both technically nonfiction because poetry is shelved in nonfiction. Now we're going to look at the fiction books I got. I grabbed Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. You're going to see a little bit of a historical fiction theme in this book haul, and this is one I've just been interested in reading since it came out, but it came out like right before I got back in the book scene. I'm just looking for the publication date if I can find it. It came out in 2020. So I feel like I more got back into the book scene in like 2021. And so people were talking about it, but it wasn't like in the forefront of my brain. I was just kind of like, oh, I think I'll probably like that. I probably like that. It's England 1580 Black Death story about a Latin tutor and the woman he falls in love with. And I oddly have a lot of plague books. This is a different plague book than the next one I'm going to talk about. But I do like, I really like historical fiction, but I don't love World War II historical fiction, which is kind of a hard thing because it's like there's a lot of World War II historical fiction. There's also a lot of like Civil War historical fiction, which I don't love. I really like medieval historical fiction. Now, I don't think the 1580s are considered the medieval period anymore. I think you're well beyond that by probably like 100 years or maybe 180. But I like this more like medieval ancient history historical fiction. And so I was like, I should read this one. I bet I'll really like it. It's also, oh no, I hate when this happens. That was smushed in there. That's okay. I'm probably, oh no, it's really stuck in there. Can I get it out? Oh no. This page might be completely ruined. Oh no, I might have to take that back. Or I could slice it. Do I have an X-Acto knife? Okay. I'm gonna cut that out. It's a very short book is what I was gonna say. It's only 305 pages. Okay, so see that? It's glued in. But I think I can librarian fix this. And I'm not gonna do it right now though. I'm gonna do it later when I'm feeling precise. One of the years I worked as librarian, I worked at a really underfunded library, so I had to do a lot of really creative crap for fixing books. So I think I can fix this. I don't think I have to exchange it. I kind of don't want to because it's a little bit of a longer drive. Okay, moving on. If you follow me on Threads, no one told me, which I should know because I am a librarian, author, and booktuber, that some of Emily Henry's books take place in Michigan. I don't live in Michigan, but I live on a Great Lake, and I love stuff that takes place by the Great Lakes. And so I grabbed, funny story, and this one is Waning Bay, Michigan, which I don't know if that's a real place. It might be up by like Traverse City, like up in the north of Michigan, which I don't know as well. But it's about Daphne, and she's engaged to Peter, and then she realizes he's in love with his childhood best friend, Petra. And it's about Daphne and Miles, who's Petra's ex. And this sounds like just like a fun, chaotic, contemporary romance. I'm a little worried because I'm just like kind of a weird person, I feel like, when it comes to romance. When people tell me, let's see, it's not that long. It's 384 pages. When there's like a really popular contemporary romance, I always feel like I'm not gonna like that book. But I wanna give it a try, and if I love it, Emily Henry has a ton of books that I can go through and just binge, obviously after I finish reading all these in like August and September. And so I was like, I'm gonna try it. We're gonna give it a try. It also has a beautiful spine. I like how the juxtaposition of the spine and the cover are like really different from each other. Lastly, my most anticipated book of everything I bought. And I was so excited to read this. I've been just waiting for this day. It's been really hard for me the last couple months not to just buy this book because I wanted it so badly. Eleanor of Avignon by Elizabeth de Lozier. And this is about a woman who is a healer during the bubonic plague in Avignon, France. And spoiler, I'll talk about this at the end because I already read it. I read this in like 2.5 days. And I loved it. Okay, so next I always pick a bookstore to go to that I've never been to before. And I was going between two. One of them is closer to where I live, and it's in like a town that I'm in sometimes because my kids have birthday parties there a lot. There's like a gym there that birthday parties are at, and it just opened. And the other is a town that's further away, but it's close to that town is closer to the town I used to work in. And so I decided to go to that one because I figure that other store, I'm going to be in that town killing time at some point in the summer or the fall, and I can peek into that store then. So I went to this store, and I'm going to start by saying they have the cutest bags. And I had thought it was a used bookstore, and then when I walked in, I was like, oh, this actually isn't a used bookstore. And so I was like, I'm not going to spend a ton of money because at the bookstore in my town, I belong to the discount club. So where you pay like, I think $15 for the year, and then you get 10% off all your purchases. And then the bookstore I used to work at, I get 10% off as a former employee. So I try to do the majority of my big book shopping at those places because they're indie bookstores and I get a discount there. So here I was like, I'm just gonna get one book. But the staff there was so friendly, and the other customers like were asking me what I was picking up. Everybody was super friendly there. It had a very cool children's department also, and had a turtle tank. And so I was like, this summer, my kids and I will go there as like on a field trip. Like we'll go to that store, we'll go back. And they had a punch card. So if you, every $10 you spend, you get a punch. And when you get 10 punches, you get $10 off your next purchase. And also any purchase you have there over $100, you got a free tote bag. Over $60, you got a free like a galley, like an ARC, like a physical copy ARC. So it was a lovely little spot. This was on display. I didn't even know this book was coming out. And I was like, oh my God, well, I'm going to buy that. And it's Saltwater by Katie Hayes. Katie Hayes wrote The Cloisters, which I adored. And I was like, how did I not know this was coming out? I'll tell you how I didn't know. One, April was a crazy, crazy month. I had a huge editing to do on the Third Witches of Star Island. And I also got flu B. So I was really not like doing my normal reading about books coming out. Two, I haven't done a books that might come out for Book of the Month or Aardvark in months because they take a lot of research and time, and I just haven't had time to do one of those videos. So I completely missed this, and I'm so excited because I love The Cloisters. This feels a little bit more thrillery. The Cloisters was gothic fiction. This felt more thrillery. So I'm going to just read the beginning of the blurb to you. In 1992, Sarah Lingate is found dead below the cliffs of Capri, leaving behind her 3-year-old daughter, Helen. Despite suspicions that the old money Lingates are involved, Sarah's death is ruled an accident, and every year the family returns to prove that it's true. But on the 30th anniversary of Sarah's death, the Lingates arrive at the villa to find a surprise waiting for them. The necklace Sarah was wearing the night she died. Haunted by the specter of that night, the Lingates find their legendary unity pushed to a breaking point. Enlisting the help of family assistant Lorna Moreno, Helen plots her escape from her paranoid insular family. But when Lorna disappears and the investigation into Sarah's death is reopened, Helen has to confront the fact that everyone who was on Capri 30 years ago remains a suspect. Her controlling father, Richard, her rarely lucid Aunt Naomi, her distant Uncle Marcus, and their circle of friends, visitors, and staff. Even Lorna, her closest ally, may not be who she seems. As long-hidden secrets about the night boil to the surface, one thing becomes clear. Not everyone will leave the island alive. I cannot wait to read this. I am so excited. It's definitely high up on the TBR list, which I will go through in a little bit, but I'm ready for another spooky, dark gothic story by Katie Hayes. Next, we go to my biggest haul of any of the stores, and it's in a reusable bag because it's from Half Price Books. This is a great bag. I'm just trying to cover up my kid's name is written on it because he brought it to camp. But I got this one summer that I worked at the Chicago Public Library. I was an intern there when I was in library school during the summer reading program, and it was one of the years that the Chicago History Museum sponsored it, and so we got these great Abraham Lincoln tote bags that have really held up. I did this before I was married, and I've been married for almost 15 years, so pretty good. Okay, this Half Price Books is always going to be a little eclectic. So we'll start with the more normal ones, and then we'll go bizarre. So the first most normal one I got Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I've wanted to read a Carly Fortune. I was kind of looking at what they had available, and I hemmed and hawed because they had quite a few, which is good because if I like it, I will go back and try to get more. This one though, I think I picked it because of where it takes place. I liked it that it took place on a lakeshore. Glittering Summers on the Lakeshore of Her Childhood. So I was like, I'm gonna like that because I love lakes. And then looks like it's like a second chance romance, I think. 6 summers to fall in love, 1 moment to fall apart, a weekend to get it right. It just seemed like something nice. My friend who said she liked summer romance also said she really liked Carly Fortune and has read a lot of those. So I'm here for it. Next, I had on my list, buy some thrillers, and I put paperback. And then I only got the hardcover Saltwater so far. So when I was at Half Price Books, I'm like, I'm just going to look through the thrillers, which is kind of hard. If you've ever been to Half Price Books, thrillers and mystery thrillers and fantasy are very hard, and romance, because their shelves are so dominated by like really big names. So there's like 3 shelves of James Patterson. So it's kind of like hit or miss if you get something. I'm not exaggerating. My Half Price Books has 4 or 5 shelves of Nora Roberts and 4 or 5 shelves of Daniel Steele. in the romance section. And it's just so you really have to get lucky getting authors outside the big names. But I grabbed this one called The Vanishing Hour by Serafina Nova Glass. I never heard of this, but I looked at the cover and I thought that looks like something I would get from Book of the Month. And then I read the back, and it's Grace Holloway keeps to herself since narrowly escaping death at the hands of the man who kidnapped her. She's thrown herself into the small inn she runs in Rock Harbor, Maine. Love Maine. It's quiet, quaint, and in the off-season completely isolated, the perfect place for Grace to keep her own secrets. But Grace isn't the only one with something to hide, and Rock Harbor isn't just a sleepy vacation town. Someone is taking young women, girls who look an awful lot like Grace did when she was kidnapped so many years ago. When a surge of disappearances bring the investigation to her door, Grace finds herself unwillingly at the center of it all and doing everything she can to keep her distance. But Grace knows something that could change everything. And when the truth comes to light, getting justice for the vanished girls might be more than Grace can handle alone. And I was like, that sounds like something I would read. So I grabbed it. Next, I grabbed a book I'm not going to read until December. If you know me, I read Ellen Hildebrand. And 2 winters ago, I read Winter Street. And then I went to my town's big book sale and I got Winter Solstice and Winter, can't remember the other one. I don't remember what it's called. But I didn't have Winter Stroll, which is the second book. And so I grabbed this one because I can read this one this winter. I didn't have the right one last winter. And last winter I had just read, what's it called? 28 Summers in September, and I didn't love that book. So there's been 2 Ellen Hildebrands I didn't love, Nantucket Nights and 28 Summers, and I read both of them last year. And so then when December came around, I was kind of like, I don't really want to read an Ellen Hildebrand right now. But then last summer, I read Swan Song, which I really liked. So I was like, I'm not going to read anything until this summer. I'm going to read, I think, Summer of 69, because I have that upstairs. I'll read that in June, and then I can read this in winter. And I'm just going to continue doing just 2 a year instead of several, because I think I get burnt out on it. I'm not the kind of person who can read, like, you know how people like read an entire backlist of an author, they get so obsessed with it. I'm not like that. I need to jump around. Next, I grabbed Lover Enshrined. There was quite a few of the Black Dagger Brotherhood at my Half Price Books, which surprised me because he's been out for a really long time. I've read 2 of them. Hold on. I've read Lover Awakened, which is down there. That was Zadist's book. And then I read one that I got from the library, and I can't remember what it's called. Lover Eternal, maybe? I think Lover Eternal. And so I was looking at all the ones they had and whose books were there, because I'm not going to read this whole series. First of all, it's like insanely long, so I'm not going to read it. And but I was like, I kind of want to read another one. The romance offerings on this were not great, and I'll talk about that at the end. But so I was like, I'm just going to grab one of these. This is Fury's book, and I'm pretty sure Fury is Zadis's twin, if I remember correctly. I read Zadis's book last September, I think, so it's been a while. But I'm like, you know what? I could go for one of these hilarious books. They're like, it's hard. I don't think you could enjoy this book if you weren't over 20 in like 2004, which is the year I turned 20. So you have to be able to be okay with how toxic masculinity worked out back then. This book came out in 2008. When I read the first one that I read, I was like, I haven't heard the word metrosexual in almost 20 years. So it's definitely got that like early 2000s vibe. But when I picture these guys, I just picture David Boreanaz as Angel, which I loved that. I loved that series so much. I love that character so much. I follow him on Instagram because of how much I loved Angel. So I feel like you have to be okay with that. So you have to know that going in. Now, the last 2 books I got at Half Price Books are kind of hilarious, and you'll laugh about which one I'm more excited about. So I got A World Lit Only by Fire by, oh my God, my Chicago accent just came out so hard on that. I got A World Lit Only by Fire, not Fire, by William Manchester. This book was extremely popular when I worked at my indie bookstore. And one of the men I worked with, it came out in 92 though, one of the men I worked with loved it. It was one of his favorite books. And since I am doing quite a bit of research into the medieval period at this moment, I was like, I should get this book and read it. It's not at the top of the TBR, but I'm definitely going to read it. But I also got Medieval Lives, 8 Charismatic Men and Women of the Middle Ages. This is actually the top of my TBR. One of my things I wanted to get was a biography. And I was having I knew I wanted to get one at Half Price Books because I didn't want to pay a ton of money in case I DNF'd it. I've never read a biography, I don't think. I've read history books, nonfiction, I've read memoir. But I don't think I've ever read a straight biography. And so I was looking at different artists, and they didn't have a biography section, which was kind of weird. And so I was just hanging in the medieval history period section. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a biography book, but it's got 8 biographies. It was like, I want to read this. So it's Helena Augusta, Augustine of Hippo. I went to an Augustinian university, so I've read the Confessions of St. Augustine. We all had to. Alcuin of York, Humbert of Lorraine, Hildegard of Bingern, Eleanor of Aquitaine, which I'll tell you why I'm interested in her in a second, Robert Grosseteste, something like that, and John Duke of Bedford. And I was like, I think this would be really fun to read. Also, I'm going to read it kind of 8 separate books. So I'm not going to try to read this as a novel. I'm going to look at it as reading, a mini biography on each of these people. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm probably going to read this in June or July because I'm really excited about it. Okay, I had one more stop. I thought about doing 6 stores, but then once I left Half Price Books, I was exhausted and very hungry. And so I was like, I'm going to do one more and then I'm going to go home. So I went to my Barnes & Noble, which is really close to Half Price Books. And I was a little sad when I got there. So there was one book I knew I wanted to get here because I had already looked it up and it was on the shelves here. And I wanted to check and see if it was at Half Price Books. It was not. And so I was like, I'll get it at Barnes & Noble. And I don't think it had been at any of the other stores I looked at. I think I looked at all of them. But as soon as I get to Barnes & Noble, I went to the romance section because my Barnes & Noble always carries a lot of, mass market historical romances that look like this. They usually have some Lindsay Sands. They usually have some Sophie Jordan. I put on my list, get Highland Brides if they have it, get some Sophie Jordan because she's my Break in Case of Emergency author, and get a couple historical romance authors that you haven't read before. They don't have those anymore. They're gone. So they had one Sophie Jordan, but it was, I can't remember what the book's called now. I already read it. Not The Duchess. It was the one before The Duchess. I'll write it here because I'm just blanking on it. But it was her new series, the first book. And I was like, oh, I've already read that one. That stinks. And then I look and they don't have any Lindsay Sands. And then I'm looking and they don't have anything. They've got the Bridgerton books. And that's it. And then they have some of those trade historical romance that have been coming out, like the Wisteria Society or whatever. But I was like, I want an $8.99, $7.99 mass market historical romance. I don't want to pay whatever it is, $18 for a trade paperback. And I got a little upset because I was like, now I'm not going to have any because I try to buy everything I'm going to read for the next couple months. And I spent a lot of money, obviously. But then I was like, okay, calm down. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to buy 2 other books here that you want, because I did find 2 that I really wanted. I found more than that, and then I was like, I'm going to put some of these back. You're going to buy these, and then you're going to read most of these. And then you're going to special order some historical romance mass market from either the store I used to work at or the one in my town with my discount. I'm like, that's okay. I'll do that. I'll give them the business, because the main reason I go to Barnes & Noble, I always go to it last, is because I look at Half Price Books for these type of romance novels. They didn't have any. The bookstore I used to work at has a very small romance. It's not a huge store. It has a small romance section. They were the same. They had Bridgerton. I don't think they even had a Sophie Jordan book there. And I was like, it's okay. I'll just order books probably at the end of June. I'll probably give myself 2 months to read a lot of these. And then at the end of June, I'll order some more. But here's what I ended up getting at Barnes & Noble. The book I wanted to get there was Mistress of Rome by Kate Quinn. I have had this on my TBR for a really long time, since 2017. I've had it on my Amazon, do you want to buy this? And then finally I was like, I need to read this book. People love Kate Quinn. People mostly read her World War II historical fiction. As you know, I'm not a World War II historical fiction reader, as I said before. There's also 4 books, I think, in this series, or like, I don't know if they're connected, but her Rome books. So if I love it, I can keep going. But I really, really love, as I said, ancient and medieval historical fiction, and it's not easy to come upon, so grabbed this. Then I actually asked for help to find the book The Astrology House by maybe like Karina Jade. I know the last name's Jade. And they showed it to me, and I was kind of going back and forth because it's in hardcover, but it's coming out in paperback in July. And I was kind of like hemming and hawing. It's an author I've never read before. I just kind of randomly came upon it. I'm like, do I want to buy a $30 hardcover? Do I want to get it from the library? And then I was like, maybe I should just get this book from the library. So while I'm hemming and hawing in the hardcover section of thrillers at Barnes & Noble, I just see this displayed. And it's The Last Session by Julia Bartz, who wrote The Writing Retreat, which I loved. That was the best thriller I read, I think in 2023 is the year that came out. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know she had a new book. As I said, I've been very busy, haven't been up on what's coming out. And so I read the blurb for that. It was like looking between this and Astrology House. And I'm like, I'm going to get this. I already know I really like this author. I was supposed to get a lot of paperback thrillers, and that just didn't happen. I got 3 thrillers, 1 paperback, 2 hardcovers, but I was like, this is the one I'm going for. So last 2 books. Okay. This is going to end up being the longest video ever because there's still so much stuff I want to tell you about. Let's keep going. I also got 3 books from Book of the Month. So I sort of include those in this haul, kind of not. The Book of the Month titles thankfully came out the day before I went shopping, which made me happy because I could kind of see where I was gonna need, because I like to read across a lot of genres. So the books I got, I'm not gonna remember the authors' names right now. I got The Bombshell, here's the cover, which is I got 2 books because I thought they might be like the book of the summer. I consider last year The God of the Woods was the book of the summer. I read that and I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I was glad I read it because literally everyone asks me if I've read it. Neighbors, friends, my doctor. So I got The Bombshell, but I also got Home of the American Circus because I think those 2 are like maybe the book of the summer. And I wanted to read both of them. So one is lit fic, Bombshell's lit fic. That's kind of Stockholm Syndrome about. It takes place on Corsica, I think, which I went through a phase in my 20s where I was like obsessed with Corsica and I wanted to go there so badly. And I wrote to their tourism board. I used to do that all the time in the early 2000s. You used to be able to write to tourism boards and they'd send you beautiful magazines about their area. I don't even think you can do that anymore. But it was just something I used to do so much when I was just living, I just didn't want to live the life I was living at that point. And I dreamt of just effing off to Corsica and for a little while Romania and also for a little while Bergen, Norway. And I got information from all of their tourism boards. So I was like, oh, I want to read something that takes place in Corsica. And then Home of the American Circus, I hemmed and hawed about because it's about a woman who's bartending in Maine and then decides to go home to her suburbs in New York. And I was like, I would want to read the flip of that really badly. Someone living in the suburbs of New York and going home to Maine. But I do think it's going to be a very popular book. And so I was like, I'm just going to get that one also. And then lastly, I got The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. I really love The Lost Apothecary and I liked The London Sand Society. And I like the idea of reading something that takes place in the Amalfi Coast because I think that's beautiful and fun. And it looked very fun. I like her books. They're very feminist historical fantasy, which I do enjoy very much. So let's talk about what I've already read and what I'm going to read next. I'm not going to do a specific May TBR, but this is kind of the order in which I'm going to read these books. I think I might change. I already read Eleanor of Avignon by Elizabeth Delosier, and I loved this book. When I started it, I was like, this is beautiful writing. It might take me a little while though, because I'm reading every single word. I am someone that occasionally skims, and I knew I wasn't gonna wanna skim a single word in this. I didn't skim a single word and I still read it in 2.5 days because it was so beautiful. Obviously, one of those days was my birthday, during which I did whatever I wanted outside of my niece's birthday party, which I did go to. And so I did lay in bed and read a lot on that day. I read probably 180 pages on my birthday. And I just really loved this book. It reminded me of The Stone Witch of Florence by Anna Rash, but better. I liked it even more. And I really liked the So Much of Florence. You're following this young woman. She's a teen, and she is kind of taking over as healer for her mother, who has died in childbirth. And the plague comes to Avignon. But also, at the same time, Queen Joanna comes to Avignon, and she's pregnant. And so this woman who's like 17 years old goes from basically researching the bubonic plague and trying to figure out how people aren't going to die from it. And she's working as an apprentice under a very famous physician. And then she's also midwife to a queen. And at the same, it's when the Pope was in Avignon, which I vaguely remember from all my Catholic education about like the Great Schism when the Pope moved out of Rome for a while. And it was just so good. It was such a good historical fiction book. And I've been wanting to read more historical fiction. And so this just like ignited me. I felt amazing reading it. I was so happy. It was amazing. It was so good. You'll get a full review, obviously, in my May wrap up because I finished it yesterday morning, which was May 4th. So I finished that book yesterday, and I was like, well, I still want to read a little bit because yesterday was the Sunday. And so I started Don't Sleep with the Dead by Nevo. This is very short. So I'm on page 47, and it's 100 pages, I think, on the dot. So this is an odd story, but it reminds me a lot of Siren Queen. So the type of magic that's in here is very strange and unique and new. Like the way Nevo writes magic, I really like because it doesn't feel like magic I've read in other books. So I really like how she does that. But I mean, it seems similar to the magic of the Siren Queen because obviously she wrote that also. We're following Nick Carraway, who's a main character from The Great Gatsby. He's the narrator of The Great Gatsby. I haven't read The Great Gatsby since the 90s. It's been a long time. It's years after The Great Gatsby. It's during World War II. And so you're pretty removed, but very weird things are happening where soldiers who died are just, their ghosts are just sort of appearing. And Nick Carraway starts to hear Jay Gatsby, even though he didn't die in war. And since I didn't read The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is it's a retelling of The Great Gatsby, I'm a little missing pieces because they talk about how he dies in that book. But I don't feel so lost that I'm not enjoying it. I am liking it so far. The magic is the coolest part. Nevo writes magic very, very well and very differently than most fantasy authors write magic, I feel like. So I am liking it, and I am probably going to finish it this afternoon. Once I finish this, up next is Saltwater by Katie Hayes. I'm just really excited to read this book. I also told myself that I was going to read one book from every store first for my first 5. And obviously I only got this one from the one store, and I'm really excited to read it. And I think it'll be a fun thriller to kind of just fly through. I am hoping to finish this book this week. I'm hoping to have read 3 books in the first week I have all these, because it's one of those great moments where I'm so excited about almost every single book I bought. Like some of them I'm not like dying to read like these ones, but I'm still really excited to read them. So I do think the next couple months of reading, I'm going to be like very passionate and excited, which is a great feeling. Next, from Half Price Books, the book I'm going to read first is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I thought that would be a fun one to read in what will most likely be the middle of May, looking at what I've got ahead of it. I think it'll be fun to have a romance and just kind of like get into it like that. Yeah. And then lastly, I don't know. I think I'm going to do The Last Session first, but I could do Mistress of Rome first, but I'm leaning towards The Last Session. It'll really depend on whether I'm in the mood for another thriller or if I'm in the mood for another historical fiction. I don't know. I will have to see. And then once I finish one of these, I will read a book of the month. And I'm probably going to read the first chapter of all 3 of them to decide what I'm going to read first, and go from there. And now that has been a wildly long video. So thank you so much for hanging out this long. Are you excited about any of these? Have you read any of these? It's a mix, I feel like, of relatively new releases and stuff that's been out for a little while. So, Eleanor of Avignon hasn't been out for that long. Saltwater hasn't been out for that long. The Dead one, what's it called? Don't Sleep with the Dead. That hasn't been out for that long. What else did I get? It's new. The Julie Bartz is new. And then I have a lot of stuff that's like new in paperback. So tell me what you're excited about. Tell me if any of these are your favorite book ever. And I can't wait to hear what you think. And if you don't want to write words, please give me a big stack of books emoji, because I have a big stack of books. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. I'll see you soon.
you.